Good evening. My name is Kenny Young, and I'm this year's chair of the VIP Distinguished Speaker Series. The VIP Distinguished Speaker Series is one of the many programs put on by the Undergraduate Business Council for the Red Macomb School of Business. Today we are joined by Dean David Platt, Associate Dean for Undergraduate Programs at the Macomb School of Business, and Mr. J.P. Bilbrey, Chairman, President, and CEO of the Hershey Company. We'll begin tonight with an interview between Dean Platt and Mr. Bilbrey. Then we'll open up the floor to Q&A from the audience. As a reminder, today's event will end promptly at 6:30 p.m. We'd greatly appreciate if you could refrain from leaving early and using electronic devices. J.P. Bilbrey is Chairman of the Board, President, and Chief Executive Officer for the Hershey Company, the largest producer of quality chocolate in North America and a global leader in chocolate and sugar confectionery. Bilbrey has more than 30 years of consumer packaged goods experience and has been instrumental in the growth of some of the world's largest and best-known brands. He has broad international experience working in more than 50 countries around the world and has lived outside the U.S. in the Middle East, North America, North Africa, and Asia. JP is responsible for global operations and commercial activities and has a thorough and comprehensive knowledge of all aspects of the company's business. He has extensive experience in the consumer packaged goods and fast-moving consumer goods categories in the United States and international markets. He is an industry thought leader on consumers' changing relationship with food, the competitive differentiator of consumer knowledge and insights, as well as the power of social commerce. Bilbrey joined the Hershey Company in 2003 from Mission Foods, where he served as senior vice president. Before joining Mission Foods, he was president and chief executive officer of Down & Waters of North America, a division of Groupe Down in Paris, France. Previously, he spent 22 years at the Procter & Gamble Company. Bilbrey serves on the board of directors of the Hershey Company, as well as on the board of directors of Colgate-Palmolive Company. Bilbrey is a member of President Obama's Advisory Committee for Trade Policy and Negotiations. He is also a U.S. private sector member of the President's newly established Advisory Council on Doing Business in Africa. Bilbrey serves as chairman of the Grocery Manufacturers Association Executive Board on the Kansas State University Business School Advisory Council, and as chairman of Enactus. Before we go on, we have a special treat today in having Mr. Rob Malcolm, Macomb's executive in residence and Hershey Board of Directors member in the audience today, who would like to say a few words about Mr. Bilbrey. Take it away.
Thanks, Kenny. It's not often you actually get to hear the truth about the CEO before he actually gives his talk. But I've been privileged to know JP for about 30 years and have served on the Hershey Board of Directors, watching him lead this fabulous company for a little bit more than the last 3 years. I think you'll learn a great deal about him and what makes him tick, but I wanted to just say a couple of quick things because this is one very unique company and one very unique leader. His curiosity has gotten Hershey to punch well above its weight in data and knowledge management. In fact, it's one of the few companies in the consumer sector that declares knowledge as one of its 5 core strategies. He's also been leading through his presidency of the Grocery Manufacturing Association dramatic changes in how the industry labels its products. And as a board of directors, we've been able to watch JP through his curiosity and thinking 4 or 5 years take a company that was quite a slow-moving company for many, many years and deliver 5 straight years of 6 to 7% top-line growth and 16% bottom-line growth. He brings a unique combination of executional skills and curiosity about how the whole world works, and I hope you'll have a chance to ask him some probing questions on that curiosity front.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Rob. Without further ado, please help me welcome Dean Platt and Mr. Bilbrey.
Thank you, Kenny. Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have a chance to hear from you and learn about your experiences.
Thank you.
So let's get the first question out of the way. My favorites are probably Payday and Good and Plenty. What are your favorites?
Hershey Almond Bar and Payday, actually.
All right.
Yeah. So we're going to get along great, I can see.
Yeah, that's right. Well, this is a real pleasure. As probably most of you don't know, I'm a Pennsylvania boy. I was raised in Pennsylvania, and the end of every school year, the big treat for us was to go to Hershey Park, which is affiliated with Hershey, and It was kind of the Six Flags of our area. And so I have a strong emotional connection to Hershey from back in the day.
Well, we will welcome you back.
All right, thank you.
Often.
I'll make a point of coming my next trip.
Good.
So the first few questions we have are more about your early career, the kind of career that these folks many of them are going to move into pretty soon here. And we hope anyway. And so tell us about your first job.
Well, So I'll answer it in two ways. So my first jobs as a kid, I was always, an entrepreneurial kind of person. So I was always, trying to sell something or work on something. And so through my church, one of the things that I remember I did was do a fund drive to remodel part of a building and all of that. So I was always cooking stuff like that up. I was a cashier at Kmart. I worked in the toy department, and I was a lifeguard, but I earned a lot of my money up through college actually playing music. And so I was a percussionist, I played in bands, and that was really, kind of my pre-professional career. And then I started my career at Procter & Gamble. I was in the sales organization, and those were the days when you had a big briefcase, looked like a box, and you'd park your car at one end of town and call on a dozen grocery stores, till the end of the day. And so, I really started out learning the industry from the ground up, I would say.
Good. Well, a lot of people start in that kind of a place, but not everybody becomes a CEO. So what is it that sets you apart? How did you make that trajectory work?
Well, nobody, starts early in their career and imagines how it might be. And, one of the interesting things about a career is your last job, you probably spend more time in than you do any other role you have throughout your career. So, I always, counsel people to focus on the work at hand and the job that's in front of you, master that, because those are all the building blocks, that get, that are so important to your success. I think, for me, I'm a naturally curious person, so I always want to understand, how things work. I'm competitive, so I want to, do my best, and so it doesn't hurt to be competitive in a constructive way versus, maybe a less constructive way. And there's a certain toughness, a mental toughness, and a perseverance that's, required. You have to be able to probably overcome, more obstacles than, people making it easy along the way. And so, that's certainly a very important piece of it. And I was always raising my hand, why couldn't we do it this way? Why couldn't we? I think I was quite annoying to a lot of my bosses probably. But at any rate, I think curiosity is really fundamental. And then the other comment I would make on this, and I talked about it earlier, I think each of us have to find our own voice. It's okay to look at the people you're around and understand why they know, why they're smart or why they do something well. Look at that, but don't necessarily try to be them. The greatest gift you have is who you are. Find that voice, then leverage all of these other things around you. And, if you can build a self-awareness early on in life, I think it'll serve you really well. And then be who you are. That's your greatest strength.
Are the skills, early career skills, the same as late career skills?
No, I probably would have to claim that I probably didn't listen as well early on as I would like to believe I do today. But I do think that what you'll find is, I always joke that probably my first performance review and my most recent performance review look strikingly similar. What I'd like you to take away from that is, again, coming back to this, you're going to have some core strengths. You're also going to have some things that aren't strengths. And so for this discussion, let's call them weaknesses, okay? What you need to make sure is whatever your weaknesses are, you understand those, but you don't allow them to become obstacles. Your greatest weaknesses probably won't translate into your greatest strengths, and that's okay. But don't allow them to be obstacles. And then you own, what I always say to people that I work with, I say, listen, my job is to leverage your strengths as best I possibly can. The role the two of us have is to make sure your weaknesses don't become obstacles. And if you'll own working on those, I'm in for whatever you want me to be to help you there, to grow and improve and make sure that they're no longer obstacles. But you can't overcome those things for others. And you very early on need to realize that you own those things. And don't let you think, well, the world's not treating me fairly. Why can't they see these things I do so well at? Just don't allow them to become obstacles, and then you'll be more comfortable with what it takes, to get better. And I think this desire to continuously improve, be a lifetime learner. I graduated from Kansas State University, so I guess we'll all be seeing a lot of each other here on the coming up weekend. I had a degree in psychology, Bachelor of Science degree in psychology. I studied marketing. I didn't have an MBA, and so I had a lot of my fortunately, I joined a company that wanted me to succeed, that had great training and helped me develop. And so there probably early on were times where I was having to prove it, to accomplish some of the things that some of my peers maybe had, broader experiences than I had. And so on, but I never let that dissuade me. Again, I had skill sets. I was, a creative guy. I'd, been in music. I was an athlete in school, and so I just kind of took the combination of working hard, and as I've said a lot of times, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room as long as you're the last one standing. And so a little bit of hard work and whatever it is you have is your strengths will take you a long way. And don't be dissuaded in any way around what's possible.
So speaking of last one standing, what's your biggest career mistake, and how did you survive it?
Well, in my office when I was in Cincinnati, I had a bunch of products. I called it the Wall of Shame. They were all products that didn't work. But from those things, they probably learned some of the better lessons that we applied to some other places. So I don't know if this is the greatest mistake, but I'll tell you about a really memorable mistake. I don't know if you guys have heard of a brand called Sunny Delight, but Sunny Delight's a beverage, and in fact, this happened in the state of Texas even. So I was working on the Sunny Delight brand. At that time, Walmart didn't carry Sunny Delight, and one of the reasons they didn't is they didn't have coolers in their stores. This was long before they had a food business. And I really wanted them to get into that sector. And so I told them, I said, well, listen, we'll buy the coolers, we'll put them in the stores, we'll pay for the electricity. And Sunny Delight in those days, I don't know what the current story is, but in those days it could stay off of refrigeration as long as it wasn't in sunlight for like 14 days. And so as long as you had good turnover, it didn't really have to be refrigerated. But the consumer always thought of it more like orange juice. It's really not orange juice. That's probably where I ought to leave it on that. But so at any rate, I got the idea that we could build a self-contained refrigerated truck, and we could park it in the parking lot, and it would be like a store outside of the store, and we would sample Sunny Delight. And so I was working for a guy that Rob and I both know. His name's John Lilly, and very creative guy. And so I asked him for the money, and we went out and we built 5 of these trucks that could run by themselves for 5 consecutive days and not have to be hooked up to a tractor trailer. And so I was very excited, and we got this whole thing filled with truck. You opened up the back, it was like a storefront, and you'd give people a token, they'd go in, they'd buy it, come back with a mark on it, and you'd hand them a 64-ounce bottle of Sunny Delight. I was so excited. And so I was going to go down and see it. So the first truck gets delivered to this new Walmart store, and they decided to use it at a grand opening. So one of the sales guys calls me from down here, and he says, hey, listen, we've got a big problem. I said, well, what's that? He said, well, we unhooked that tractor trailer from that semi, and he said the whole thing sunk right through the asphalt. And so if you remember, asphalt, when you pour it, it's still pretty soft. So here we pull up with, this probably 60,000-pound load in a brand new store right in front of the store, And the first thing that happens, the thing sinks down into the ground. So they weren't very happy. So we start scrambling around, and of course, we had to get some special equipment and pull it out of the ground. And we said, well, we'll pay for, you fixing your parking lot and all that. But I was on the phone with the buyer begging him for a second chance. So he says, okay, we'll give you a second chance, but you got to leave that truck there so this thing doesn't sink into the parking lot another time. I said, okay. So same thing, I'm going to fly down there. Phone rings, same guy. He says, we got a big problem. I'm like, okay, I'm done. And he said the problem this time was that they completely sold out that truck in about 2 hours. And so we started backing up a truck every day to that store for about a week, and they sold an entire truckload of Sunny Delight every day in just a couple of hours. And so we rolled that program out over the summer for all these new stores, and then that's how we got Sunny Delight into distribution at Walmart. So that whole program started out as a failure, and I'm just telling you a small part of the funniest part of the failure. We had a lot of challenges along the way to get that thing to work and to get the truck built and all of that. But what was great about that experience is I had a boss that said, here's the money, go figure it out. I had to go down and talk to trailer manufacturers. I had to build a reefer system that didn't exist at the time that could run on its own and all sorts of things. We won a printing award for the way those trucks looked in a national carrier recognition. So there was a lot of fun things came out of it. But most of what made that a success didn't have anything to do with anybody asked me to go work on or go do. But I was dying to find a way to get that. And I don't know what value that would be over the 25 or 30 years ago that happened, but those are the kinds of things that if you get in the right place and the right job, at least in our industry, it was people giving me the chance to do things, taking obstacles, some failure, and ultimately turning it into a success.
Yeah, you learn a lot of confidence from that, right?
Yeah, it was terrific. I mean, I thought I was going to die about 5 times, but it was a lot of fun.
Well, it only seems fair to ask about your greatest accomplishment then after asking that.
Boy, I don't, that's a big question that probably I don't have anything that qualifies as a good answer. Beyond my family and things, I would say from a professional standpoint, there's something that we're currently doing that I'm really proud of, and Lee just got back from Africa, seeing it, and there's a segment of food for children that are starving. It's called RUTF. It's ready-to-use therapeutic food. And, we're in food manufacturing, so these are kinds of things which are right in our wheelhouse to be able to do. But it's not something your shareholders or, others are necessarily going to ask you to go do, because on some level you got to make them pay their way and so forth. So Lee's in charge of not only our corporate communications but also our corporate social responsibility. Here, you can throw that at me if you want. And so over the last 5 or 6 years, actually it's been a little bit longer than that, I've always been fascinated that if you take one of these RUTF foods and you take a child who's probably going to die within a week, and you intervene with basically fat and protein. So if you think about peanut butter is essentially protein and fat combined. Peanuts are really nutritious. And then if you add some nutrients to that, you can give that to this child. The mother can see an improvement really over a matter of 2 or 3 days, and that child's probably going to have a shot at living if you can get it in the next round of care that it needs. So we were meeting with the president of Ghana, and it's been only 2 years ago, I think, we were in this meeting. And we were in New York, Lee was with me, and he was talking about their school lunch program. And in their school lunch in Africa, in some of the developing countries in Africa, you know, one of the primary reasons kids go to school, if they can get to school at all, is there's a lunch program. So they go there to eat. Hopefully they learn as well, but some of these schools don't even have teachers. They just go there and, you know, in the hope that something good will happen. And we've done some other work with some other companies that are like-minded around getting good teachers in schools and so forth. But at any rate, we teamed with a doctor out of Chicago, and to develop a product. It's called Vivi, is the brand we put on it. And so the president said, you know, I've got this school lunch program. And I said, well, you know, I have an idea that could be interesting. You know, would you want to work with us on it? And I said, listen, this thing's just rumbling around in our heads. It isn't something that we've actually done yet, but if you'll deliver on your side, we'll try to deliver on ours. So we took a modest amount of money approved by our board of directors. We built a plant. We're trying to source all of the peanuts locally as best as we can at the right quality. Local people work in the plant. And we now have, I think it's, how many kids a day is currently? 50,000. So we get it to 50,000 kids today. We want to expand it further around the country. USAID has been impressed enough with what we're doing here that they've agreed to take over the program in 2017. So one of the important things to think about as you think about the role of a corporation, the responsibility and social responsibility, is we can bring a lot of know-how up against a problem. And I have a personal belief around what I would call social commerce. And the reason I call it social commerce versus philanthropy is one of the challenges of philanthropy is the money can run out. The difference between social commerce and philanthropy is you try to build an entity that the entity can sustain itself via capitalism. You still may have to prime the pump via your own money or other support money to get the thing going, but the goal is ultimately to make it commercially viable. Kids love this stuff. It's really formulated to the local palate. It comes in several flavors. But, you know, Lee saw it for herself, you know, when she was there, you know, the kids using the product and everything. So I'm really proud to be a part of this. You know, one of the great things about a corporation is all of us can bring a different element. And so one of the things we like to say is our success isn't about any one of us, but it's about all of us. And I think that's one of the great powers of a corporation. So I'm very fortunate to be in a role that I can ask other people to go work on this. And then if it makes sense, I can make it a part of the company's social purpose or one of the things that we do. But I couldn't do any of this without the collective effort of all of us. So this is really something I'm really proud of the Hershey company. I'm proud of people like Lee and the other people. There's really a modest team of people that went and made this a reality. And not only are they giving kids, so we talk about it, you know, kids need to focus on, they don't need to be focusing on their stomachs, they need to be focusing on their learning, and this really enables them to do that. So I think, and we're also looking to take this into a couple of different forms, a commercial version, as well as potentially a much, one with even a higher efficacy that would address specific kinds of things. Mm-hmm. So one of the great things about, I'll stop talking about this, but one of the great things about having the resources of a corporation, you can do a lot of good. And I think your generation comes to this naturally. I think it's something that you want to do. I think it's something that you should think about in terms of what kind of companies do you want to work for. I'm very proud of our company that we're doing this. There's other companies doing terrific work as well. So I would never try to suggest we're the only ones that, you know, think about these things. But I'm glad we are one of the ones, you know, that thinks about this. Yeah. So this is the power of being associated with a great company.
So your corporate social responsibility program, I think, is your Nourishing Minds program, right?
Yeah.
That's how you brand it.
Correct.
Are there other elements besides this as part of it?
I don't know, Lee, you want to talk about it? Well, honestly, I got the poster, but actually Lee's the expert. So why don't you give us a couple of minutes, Lee?
So just really quickly, Hershey Wines is really made of what we're doing in Ghana, which is the signature program with Vivi. Here in the U.S., we have a partnership with Feeding America and the backpack program. So we actually team up with local food banks and our employees, and we work with providing children who are rich because, as Vivi said, many kids come to school looking for a meal. That's the same here in the U.S. And when they go home on weekends or their summer breaks, they don't have the nutritious foods that they need. So we work with basically developing backpacks to provide nutritious meals when they go home. That's probably one of the biggest things we do in the U.S. But we're looking at applications, and it takes different forms in different markets. We're looking at something different in India versus something different in China. Really, we tailor that to what the local needs are. But it's all under basically basic nutrition for breakfast.
That's really good, so thank you, Lee. That's awesome. So I wanted to recognize Lee, because yesterday I did an interview at the White House that Lee had told me specifically, don't you talk to anybody. And unfortunately, I did, but it turned out okay, so we're still in sort of a making up phase here. So I was glad that you're able to talk to everybody.
Well, we're running low on time, and you've had a really interesting international career. I wish we could talk for another hour, but I thought I'd ask you a few questions related to that. And I noticed that as I was doing some preparatory reading for this, something really caught my attention, which is that apparently you're introducing this year a new Hershey Kiss product for the holidays that derived from something that you did for the China market initially, or at least that's what I read. I don't know if there's any truth in that, but if you could talk about how that interaction works.
We have a product, it's called Kisses Deluxe, and we're now expanding it into the U.S. In China, gifting is a really important segment, and you can find gifting in everything. I mean, you could find gifting in motor oil, you could find gifting in cooking oil, and you could find gifting in certainly our category as well. And so this is an exciting product that solves for a gifting occasion. Kisses Deluxe is a product that has like a hazelnut in it. It's got a crunchy texture to it. It's larger than the standard Kiss. It's in a gold wrapper and a really very nice transparent package that you can give something to someone you care about and be proud of the package and the product. So, but it's interesting that what's happening now. We have a R&D center in China. And we're now starting to benefit from the backflow of ideas coming out of our international markets that are really excellent for our U.S. market. So, traditionally you kind of say, hey, I'm going to unbolt some old equipment and I'm going to go bolt it in a developing country. And really what's happening today is that some of your most sophisticated manufacturing facilities and your newest facilities are actually in, the developing world. And bringing your best technology, and then out of that also comes then some of these innovative products, and they're relevant in all other markets around the world, and that's just awesome to see because you realize then you're growing up as a company doing global business.
Yeah, that was an interesting perspective to me because just like with the equipment, I think of our products, the gold standard is here, and then we adapt them for other places, and it's backflowing now then.
Yeah, our plant in Monterrey, Mexico. Every person on the line there has an engineering degree. So our workforce in Monterrey, Mexico is actually one of the highest manufacturing educated forces we have.
That's great.
Yeah.
Before I open it to questions, let me ask you one last one, which I think is an important question, which is that what can a company's leadership and leadership team do to set the ethical standard for the company?
Well, behavior is really, there's no substitute for behavior. And I think it's the standards you hold yourself to, and then you actually do the things that, have the rest of the company meet those standards. So you can't talk about it and not do it. It's extraordinarily important because, in a large organization, culture is really what drives so many things. And culture is a result. It's not something you put in a statement. So culture is a result of the work you do. And how you go about doing that work is what's going to happen when you're not there. So we all can only be one place at one time. But if you've created a culture that these things are important, you've got a higher probability of that culture delivering against your expectations. And so I think it starts with me and every other employee in the company. And that's really our pact with each other, and that's why we want to work where we work.
And would you say you were attracted to Hershey because of the culture that was there too?
I think that's very true. So, I thought it was a terrific opportunity to go build an international business. I thought it was a place where I felt very good about the people I was going to work with, and then the values of the Hershey company and the great story of Milton Hershey, is really central to the way that our company behaves. And so it felt very comfortable to go there. It's funny because originally I got a call and they said, hey, we'd like you to, come meet Rick Linney, who was the CEO at the time. And I said, man, I'm not living in the Northeast. And so no, really, you ought to come see. And I loved it. I loved it. It's just a really great place. And the people make it great. The work's great. So,
Good.
it's been a good ride.
Great. Kenny, can we open it for questions now? All right, so if you have a question, there's a microphone in the middle. If you would come down to the microphone, it would be easier for all of us. Please don't be shy, just walk right down the middle aisle.
Hello, is this?
It doesn't sound.
Well, I can speak loudly. So I'm Matt Reitman. I'm a first-year business honors student, and so Hershey is a global corporation. But earlier you mentioned a focus on local employment for the original plant, which supplied Vivi bars through Energized Learning.
Yep.
I admire that sense of community involvement a lot. So my question is, do you try to perpetuate this mindset on a global scale? And if so, what difficulties or obstacles do you face in doing that?
Well, one of the interesting things about the food business is food's local, and manufacturing close to where it's going to be consumed is also really important because freshness is important as well. So, typically we want to manufacture close to where the greatest consumption is going to be. We have manufacturing facilities in India, we have it in certainly in China. We have several locations, there. We're building a new plant in Johor, Malaysia. We have several facilities in Mexico, a number around North America, Canada, et cetera. So you, by default, really have to be part of the communities that you're in because that's who the people are that are your company. So, I can remember one time at a shareholder meeting, a person, stood up and said something derogatory about one of our geographies. And I said, stop. I said, there's not a single person in this company wakes up in the morning and doesn't want to perform at their best. And I said, and by the way, the education of that organization is frankly much higher than the average of many of our other organizations. And these people love the company. This is their company. So we all make up this company. And so I'm very passionate about that. I think I see the world with a global vision. I've had a chance to live and participate in places where I was a guest in a country. And that's how I want all of us to behave. And so we try to be local as best we can. And then we send our people, we're better at this, we're growing at this, but we really want our people in the U.S. to go work in other geographies and want people from other geographies, coming to the U.S. So we, we build that culture.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Great question.
Hey, my name's Blake, and I realize this was probably before your time, but do you have any idea what the inspiration behind the shape of the Hershey Kiss was?
Well, it was actually, it's actually the way the kiss came out of the depositor, and then when it went up, it made a kissing sound, and that's how ultimately it became known as kisses.
There are some great online videos if you want to see them, how it's made.
And so here's a trivia, on this, here's a trivia question. I'll give you the answer without taking the time to make it a question. But we make, in Hershey, Pennsylvania, in our West Hershey plant, of course, we make kisses all around the world, we make 70 million kisses a day in that. And boy, I tell you, they look like an army when they come off of that. I always wonder where they're all going, but I'm glad they're going.
Mr. Bilbrey, thank you for coming. My name is Sapan Patel. I'm the president of UT's Untitled Chapter, actually.
Oh, great.
Yeah. I guess I was wondering what your experience has been like with that organization, but also the other boards you serve on, and how you kind of personally involve yourself in the community as well.
Yeah, you know, the things that I'm currently involved in are things that I want to be involved with. And of course, time is the most challenging thing to be involved with different things. And so actually, this past week, I rotated off being the chairman of Enactus. So the World Cup in South Africa was the last event I would have attended, and I was actually off in China doing some important work that I have responsibility for with the Hershey Company. So I didn't get to attend that. But I really like that organization a lot. I think, you know, this entrepreneurial action, you know, with young people, university students like yourself is so powerful. The projects that come out of that are just terrific. And so it's been an honor for me to participate. You know, we all make time for the things that we want to do. You know, we all learn how to live with whatever our responsibilities are. So, you know, I stay involved a bit with my alma mater, as a family and personally, you know, I like doing things that involve kids and young people. I think that, you know, some of these things that I try to do corporately, in many ways help feed that, you know, desire. But you know, again, you know, those would be a couple of examples. And, you know, when I'm home, I like to be home. You know, I've got a fairly complex life, so I seek simplicity, you know, versus complexity. And best wishes on your Enactus endeavors. If you guys don't know about Enactus, you should learn about it. It's terrific. It's really
I'm
terrific.
actually Sean Sellers. I'm the real Enactus president.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. I'm not messing around.
So I just had a quick question. You said you came from a marketing background. So how does that?
I started my career in sales.
Oh, it's sales. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
but you had a marketing degree.
No.
No.
So I took.
You.
So I have a degree in
passion.
psychology. I took marketing courses in college, but I don't have a degree in marketing.
Okay,
I have a
okay.
degree in psychology.
Would you say like psychology or that taking the marketing courses has had any like?
Oh, yeah. I think that you know, first of all, the undergraduate courses I took were all pretty basic marketing courses, but I really enjoyed them. I learned, you know, a lot. I grew up in a company where marketing was a big focus, and then, of course, in my responsibilities, you know, in the latter parts of my, you know, career where you have operational control of everything, it's just like accounting. I always joke that I'm going to be an accountant by the time I retire, because you end up, of course, having a lot of exposure to a lot of different things in a company. But I think, you know, the sales and marketing curriculum and opportunities that are presented early in your career are really good ones, because you're either learning about consumers and brands, or you're learning about customers and the industry you're in. And if you choose to work in a specific industry, the best advice I can give you is become a student of that industry. Don't just do the job, you know, go be a student of that industry, and it will really serve you well over time, especially if you stay in that industry. But every job you ever have, become a student of the industry. Otherwise, you're just not a serious player, right?
When you roll out a new product, do you kind of target it towards a certain person, or do you just?
Yeah, there's a, you know, you really want to understand who your consumer is and what the demand of that, you know, segment is going to be. So, yeah, we have very sophisticated models by where we identify who it is we want to sell stuff to. You bet, thank you.
Hi, my name is Anna Haran, and I'm currently a junior here. And kind of just branching off of that, so I'm currently taking marketing actually, and
Yep.
we're taught that a brand is supposed to solve a problem. So I'm just wondering what you think the problem Hershey solves.
Well, when you ask, let's use kisses as an example. You can go almost anywhere in the world and ask someone, what does this kiss mean to you? And almost everywhere they'll talk about sharing. And so what Kisses solves for, in addition to being a chocolate and all the other good things, is it enables people to share with each other. And that's one of the core things that brand does. So if you look at our advertising, we had some advertising when I first joined the company, and you might remember this song, What the World Needs Now, and it was called the Raining Kisses advertising. So you guys were probably not old enough. But anyway, it showed these kisses raining down. It was very emotional. You wanted to pick up the phone and call somebody you loved and say, I love you. But it didn't cause you to go to the store and buy something. And it didn't necessarily solve something that had you maintain your relationship with the brand. So today, if you see some of our it's called factory advertising, but if you see that, you might see a grandfather sharing a kiss with a child. You might see a mom sharing a special moment. You might see a couple special. And so what it solves for is consumers say, hey, this thing is for sharing, and so we're giving them we're suggesting ways in which they can share the product. So that's an example of a specific product.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Hello, I am Diana, and I'm a business and economics major, and I am from Egypt. That's why my questions are gonna actually be my questions are actually going to be about the African continent. So I wanted to ask you, considering the fact that you're a business advisor on the African continent, I was wondering, what do you believe are the challenges that are facing businesses right now doing business on the African continent? And also, considering the fact that the African continent has like one of the fastest growing countries, economics like in the whole world, what do you believe are the potentials or the opportunities that maybe businesses should take advantage of to keep growing?
Yeah, I think, I think Africa is going to be one of the, call it the new and exciting places for businesses, to succeed. Capital is an issue in Africa that has to be solved for, not so much on the human side as much as, just on the economic side. Nigeria is very exciting right now. Lagos is, of course, the place you would go, and we see West Africa is interesting as well. It used to be, like in my time when I lived in Egypt, if you were to ask most companies, how do you succeed in Africa, you'd say, well, start in the north in Egypt and start in the south in South Africa. I don't think that model is quite that apparent anymore. I think that you can go other places. And so I think, it used to be all about the BRIC countries, and the BRICS are a little bit broken now. So as you think about places that may be whatever the next acronym is, certainly the continent of Africa is going to be really exciting. I also think that we will see over the next, I'll call it 25 years, and I know that probably sounds like a ridiculously long, period of time, but I think some of the great leaders are going to come out of Africa. I think that with the opportunities that exist there and the way business gets done today at a much more accelerated and rapid rate, enough other places to have seen business models, I think to lead a company in the future, I think, it'll be important to have, the experiences that we all know about the normal suspects today, but I think you're going to have to add Africa and some of the key countries there to the list if you want to be relevant in the future.
Thank you.
So good luck.
Hi, my name is Alex, and I am currently a senior here. So my question involves data analytics. At the very beginning, there was a mention of the development of advanced data analytic capabilities.
Yep.
And what I'm curious about is what specifically does that entail, and what kind of impacts that has on daily business operations?
Yeah, so the whole area of big data and predictive analytics is really important at our company. And the way that has nurtured itself is we really see ourselves as a knowledge company. And so when we went on the journey to establish knowledge as a competitive advantage, We had to talk to people we normally weren't talking to and spend time in places. So one of the things I like to say is mathematics are back, and so math is important. People with like orange hair and funny sneakers and all that kind of stuff are really relevant to corporations in the future because the whole area of analytics is going to be really, really important. And part of what's changed, and this is such a big question, and it's something I love to talk about because it's important to our company. But one of the things that changes in the world going forward versus the world we're kind of moving past is a lot of data today has been compartmentalized, and syndicated data is, I like to say, inside of a box, and then you build a box to talk to that box. And then what happens is information comes out, and then people report on that information. But it's finite by default because of the way it's initially structured. In a knowledge environment or in an environment of big data, what becomes important is your ability to ask questions and to have disparate buckets of data that don't necessarily, you don't know ahead of time how they relate to each other, but it's the algorithms that take you to this correlation that then you explore, do these correlations mean anything or they don't mean anything? And then under that, what more can I learn about? So at an enormous rate of speed, you can go through billions of rows and columns of data. Did I get it? Columns, I don't know. Anyway, you can go through, I don't know how the machine works exactly, but anyway, you can go through all of this data at an extraordinary rate of speed. So what happens is, and let's use my job as an example. I would meet with the marketing guys and the consumer insights folks, and we would talk about something, and we'd say, well, gee, what's this mean? Or I've been wondering about that. And then they would go away for 2 or 3 weeks. They would work on that. Then they'd come back with a nice PowerPoint presentation, and we'd go through that, and then I'd have another question, and they'd go away. And in the meantime, you could be dead, right? I mean, your competitor could be, really taking advantage of you. What happens in this new world is you have software that enables you to go across these disparate buckets of data at an extraordinary rate of speed. And then it can create a visualization of that information that allows you to very quickly understand it. Once you understand if you're looking at the right thing or not, in live speed, you can ask the next 4, 5 levels of questions, and like this, you're getting answers. And you're sitting with the people who are the real experts of going and getting under that data. So you may get through, a month of analysis in the old world in an hour, and you have all the right people in the room. So now you can formulate the next level of question that says, hey, if we knew this, and here's what we think all this other stuff means, we would go do something. And the certainty by which you can get to the something is so far greater than any place we've ever been before. And that's what makes it super, super exciting, this whole world of new analytics. In an earlier session, I was talking about we work with providers. One of them would be Palantir. We work with other providers. I just met with Ginny Rometty at IBM in the last few weeks. And I'm going to go meet Watson for the first time. So she said she's going to show me all things Watson. And so, I mean, that's exciting. And so this concept of being a knowledge company has you approach things quite a bit differently than you would have before. And so I'll make one other point on this because it's an important point that it may not come up in other questions. In the pursuit of being 5 years smarter than everybody else, don't lose sight of the fact you got to be 1 week better in terms of execution. So it's not just an intellectual exercise. It also has to be an executional exercise because that's really what we do, and that's where you win and lose, with feet on the street. So, as you think about these things, you just got to remember why you're trying to be smarter so you can go do something with it.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet.
I think we have time just for the one last question, so it's you.
Hi, my name is Sanat. I'm a freshman computer science major, so
Ah,
not a
good.
business major. My question was that Hershey's been around for a long time, and after the 2000s, even the 1990s, the burst of the internet bubble and a lot of everything going viral, how has the work culture at Hershey's been impacted by that, and how has Hershey's changed with the times and the growth of information technology?
Well, you know, we're right at 125 years old as a company. So my guess is management teams have sat around over those years and had to change and adapt to a lot of different things and a lot of changes, you know, whatever they were. I think we continue to do that. But what I would tell you is the world is ever accelerating. We believe we have to build agility into our organization. We have to be fluid in the way we structure, and we have to be open-minded that what we did today to succeed may not be relevant in how we succeed in the future. One of my analysts shared a letter. It's very interesting. So we were in a meeting, and we were getting all this information about market data and stuff, and she read this letter, and the letter could have been written yesterday, but it was written in 1990. And some of the issues that the management team at the time was really concerned about sounded like exactly some of the things that I'm thinking about. So I think that the tools may have evolved. Some of those things, you know, may be the way we approach things more sophisticated and better and faster. But, you know, we're fundamentally in the consumer business. And if we ever lose sight of that, all of these other things don't solve for something other than solving for the wants and needs of the people who interact with our products. And if we don't do a good job of that, somebody else will do a good job of that. And so we're ever evolving as a company.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much.
Thank
We
you.
really enjoyed learning from you.
Great.
Thank you very much, Dean Platt and Mr. Bilbrey. We appreciate you guys taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with our students. I know that we'll be able to take your lessons about building our own voice, the power of social commerce, and why Payday is the superior candy bar of choice people, and apply them into our own lives. So we actually have a tradition here at VIP, and as a token of our appreciation, the Undergraduate Business Council would like to present Mr. Bilbrey with his very own personalized Stetson cowboy hat, a recognition
yeah,
of your
baby.
participation in the VIP Distinguished
I'm a
Speaker
horse
Series.
guy, too. This is big. This is big. So,
This is yours.
very good.
Can you give me a hook 'em? Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. Hershey.com, we're looking for the smartest people we can find, so come see us.